This is another thing. How many, as of a couple years ago, how many atheists were there in Congress?
0.
0. 535 members of Congress, 0 were openly non-religious. And even if you look in 2008, like the current administration, there are only 5 members of Congress who don't have a listed religion, and all 5 of them, as far as we know, are religious. They just don't want to list it. So I worked with a group called the Secular Coalition for America. This is the first registered lobbying group in Washington, D.C. that lobbies on behalf of non-religious people. And we were wondering the same thing. We're like, look, all of us know a lot of atheists, and we've been in this movement for a while. How is it possible? 535 people, 10 to 20% of Americans are non-believers. Surely someone in Congress is. So we had a contest. We said, we'll give you $1,000 if you can name the highest-ranking elected public official in America who is openly non-religious. And we figured, best case scenario, it's like Dick Cheney's an atheist. And worst case scenario, it's like a local dog catcher. In which case, we just prove our point. You can't be an atheist and get elected in this country. And a couple people nominated this guy, who's Pete Stark, a House of Representatives member from California. And they said, yeah, he says he's a Unitarian, but he doesn't believe in God. And so we contacted Stark's office and we're like, hey, are we allowed to go public with this and say you're a non-theist? That was the word we used. And he said, yeah, that's fine, I don't care. Really? After all that? And so we went public with it. And guess what the reaction was? There was next to nothing. No one made a big deal about it, which I think is an amazing, positive thing. Like, it just wasn't a big deal that Pete Stark was not religious. And by the way, I should say, like, we also heard that about 15 to 20 other members of Congress were also not religious. And some of the people we know who have a lot of political connections, they have confirmed that they know people in Congress who don't believe in God. However, none of those people have given us permission to go public with it, which defeats the whole purpose of what we want to do. Like, so hopefully, one of the goals of the Secular Coalition for America in the next 10 years is to get another 10 or 20 people to come out of the closet and admit that they're non-religious. So we'll see how that happens. But when we mentioned Pete Stark, no one really got upset except for one person. Guess who that was? Yes. Pissed off. And so even if you look at his book, the I'm America and So Can You book, look at what he writes about Pete Stark. Atheist is a driving force behind what I call big secularism. You can just see Stephen Colbert reading this. Card-carrying members of BS have snaked their way into every branch of our federal government, except for the judicial and executive. You know that in the House and the Senate, there is one self-described atheist serving. Pete Stark, to name just one. Just think of it. How are any pro-faith initiatives going to make it into law when Congress is held hostage by the anti-God of Stark himself and him? That was awesome. How cool is that? So, the other thing, this is the Secular Coalition for America that helped Pete Stark come out of the closet, at least in that sense. And by the way, in 2008, this all happened in 2007, 2008, he ran and he won by a large margin, just as he had in the past. So it didn't hurt him in the elections. And we're hoping that as more people realize that, maybe they'll be willing to come out. And that, by the way, that includes Republicans too. And maybe in the next 10 years, as people are retiring and they're not going to run again, maybe they'll be more willing to say they're not religious. We'll see. The other thing, the reason I really like the Secular Coalition for America is for years we've been talking to members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, and finally when the Obama administration came in, we figured we probably have a better chance now of really getting a seat at the table, really talking to the administration. And just a couple months ago, they said, fine, we'll have members of the Obama administration meet with atheists. And so the members of the Secular Coalition for America had a meeting at the White House with members of the Obama administration. They had like 4 representatives from the military and child welfare and things like that. They met with us, and we had 3 main issues we were raising. Because again, the goal of the Secular Coalition is not to like convert America to atheism or something. The goal is to get equality, break those stereotypes. So one thing we brought up is in the military, there are a lot of atheists in foxholes, a lot of atheists in the military who have commanding officers who are proselytizing to them. And if you don't pray along with the rest of the crowd, you're either not promoted or you're left out of the crowd, and they shouldn't be doing this in the first place. That was one thing we brought up. We also brought up the fact that in some states, there are some parents who are Christian Science, members of Christian Science who practice that. If their kids get sick, instead of taking them to a doctor, they just pray for the disease to go away. And in some cases, those kids have died. And when those parents get taken to court, they're let off the hook completely because they get a religious exemption because they're Christian Scientists. We think that's wrong. We think they should be punished just as anyone else would have been punished. That was another thing we brought up. The last thing we brought up was faith-based initiatives. A lot of religious communities, churches, get money from the government to do some good community service work. But at the same time, those churches are firing people who are gay. They're firing people who don't believe in their religion. And discrimination is wrong. That's a law in the government, but somehow those religions get an exemption when it comes to those faith-based initiatives. So those were the issues we were bringing up. That's what the Obama administration heard. Now, what are they going to do with what we had to say? I don't know. Maybe it's lip service, but I think it's a big deal that they're giving us a seat at the table. The one thing they stressed to us was that this is not a goodbye, this is a hello, this is a first of hopefully many meetings in the future. So that's one group that the Secular Student Alliance is affiliated with. We're one of the member groups of the SCA. So that's one group. Another group, here's probably the most personal thing that has happened to me in the past couple of years. So my day job is not atheism related. I am a high school math teacher. I'm on spring break right now. That's how I'm here. But this is my third year of teaching high school math. And you would think like, that was a concern I had going when I got the job, which is, this book came out before I got the job. Somehow I got the job because I just didn't put any of this on my resume. Which, by the way, you should have seen that resume. It was completely blank, because like any leadership qualities I have are atheist related. You know, what have you done for the past couple of years? I've run an atheist group, I've written a book about atheism, like, I don't want to, so very sparse resume, but somehow I got this job, and it's awesome, I love it. But last year, around this time of the year, I got an email from like the Illinois Family Institute, which is kind of like one of those focus on the family type of groups. And they said, we're hosting an event in my area called a Christ-like response to homosexual activism in our schools. And I'm like, okay, I've heard of those groups doing things like this. I've never actually seen what they have to say. I want to go there. Like, I want to know what they have to say. And I'm not going to go up there and like raise a protest. I'm not going to hold signs saying things like this. But I wanted to go and hear what they have to say. And when I went there, here's one of the things they said. The lady up there, her name was Lori Higgins, she passed out this flyer that said, look at what this one suburban school in Illinois is reading. This teacher's making these kids read Angels in America by Tony Kushner. And look at the horrible things in it. There's 50 examples of the F word and 27 instances of the S word. And look at these excerpts, and they're horrible and taken out of context. Yeah, they're pretty vulgar. But she made it sound like this teacher was, this liberal, hippie, communist English teacher, was making his kids all read this. So when I did some research later, I realized, wait a minute, he's not making them do anything. This English teacher taught senior advanced placement honors English, and he sent a letter home to every parent of those students saying, hey, I want your kids to read Angels in America. It has a lot of mature themes in it, a lot of content that, you know, is appropriate only for adults. But I think it's really relevant to those kids because it deals with a lot of issues we're talking about in society these days. Now, if you feel uncomfortable with that as a parent, that's fine. Your child will read Albert Camus' The Stranger. But if you allow them to read this book, you have to opt in. You have to sign this piece of paper, I have to get it, and only then can your kids be allowed to participate in these discussions. I think that's a fair way to handle this, and if you're a parent and you don't want your kid reading it, your child wouldn't get hurt by that. But that's not the way they put it. You know what I mean? They just kind of said, look what they're making the kids do. And they also mentioned the Day of Silence, which is a day in April where I participated in it when I was in high school, where they say if you're gay or lesbian or you're an ally of that community, you could like wear a rainbow sticker or something that signifies that you support them. And you're silent all day. You don't say a word during the day in support of the GLBT community members who have had to be silent about who they are. It's not a school-run thing. It's just students who want to do it can organize it themselves and do it. And you know, if you go to the website, they even say, look, if you've got to give a presentation in class, do it. If a teacher asks you, that calls on you to do something, do it. This doesn't take away from doing your schoolwork. But if you want to show your support, this is what you can do.